Greetings. Welcome to the first online lecture for Philosophy 1020, Spring Semester 2020, Auburn University. Before describing Feinberg's account of rights, we will start with some background information. First, note that philosophers standardly distinguish legal rights and moral rights. Legal rights are rights you have because there exists a law that says you have them. In comparison, moral rights are rights you have in virtue of belonging to a moral category. Given this distinction between legal and moral rights, it may be true that in one sense someone has, for example, a right to use disparaging language, yet in another sense they do not have the right to use such language. One could argue that the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution affords people the right to call someone an insulting name, but that is not to say that they have a moral right to do so. In his paper, The Nature and Value of Rights, Joel Feinberg is primarily interested in the notion of moral rights. To illustrate what rights are and why they're valuable, Feinberg invites us to imagine a place called Nowheresville, where no one asserts any rights. In other words, people don't believe they have rights, and the concept of rights does not enter into discussions about what people should or should not do. Feinberg suggests that despite the absence of rights in Nowheresville, other moral notions exist. For instance, there are duties in Nowheresville. Duties can refer to what we are required to do, but not necessarily what someone has a right to. Consider a few examples. First, drivers in Nowheresville believe they have a duty to drive safely, but not because they believe others have a right against them that they drive safely. Second, people in Nowheresville think they have a duty to be charitable. However, in general, no one has a right to any particular individual's charitable contribution. Thus, there is no right to charity. These examples show that duties are independent from rights. While it does seem true to say that if I have a right to something, someone else has a corresponding duty to provide me with it, the reverse is not true. In other words, the fact that you have a duty to do something does not entail that another person has a right that you do it. A second moral notion that exists in Nowheresville is known as desert, also known as what people deserve. In general, desert is a fittingness between one individual's character of action and another's favorable or unfavorable response. Consider as an example the relationship between humor and laughter. A good joke deserves a laugh. You can also think of the relationship between a good deed and a reward. To say that someone's funny remark deserves laughter or that someone's good deed deserves a reward is not to say that either person has a right to these things. Finally, people in Nowheresville can enter into relationships that lead to duties of various kinds through what Feinberg calls a sovereign right monopoly. Suppose we're in Nowheresville. When I lend you $2 today and you promise to pay me back next Tuesday, you have a duty to pay me back next Tuesday. Likewise, when you sign a contract to work for me, you have a duty to fulfill the terms of the contract. However, in neither case do I have a right against you that you do what you have agreed to do. Rather, there is a sovereign individual, God, who exists outside of Nowheresville and who has all rights. So, when you make a promise, God has a right that you do what you promised. Just as some Christians have said, it takes 3 to marry, the 2 spouses and God, so too does any moral relation involving rights require 3 parties. Importantly, none of the individuals in Nowheresville have rights themselves. Only God has rights. To sum up, Nowheresville has the concept of duties, desert, and the notion of rights through the idea of a sovereign right monopoly. What's missing is the notion of individual rights. To see what these are, notice what people in Nowheresville are not doing, claiming. In other words, they do not claim that something is theirs. They have no notion of what is due to them. To make a claim to something is to demand something. For example, you may demand money that someone owes you, or claiming can involve insisting that something not be done to you. For instance, you may make a claim against someone to not violate your privacy. Making a claim is different from having a claim. You have a claim when you have the basis for making a demand. Notice that someone can be unable to make a claim, yet they may nevertheless have a claim to something. What are some examples you can think of where someone has a claim but cannot make a claim? Here is how Feinberg describes his notion of a right on page 155 of his essay. To have a right is to have a claim against someone whose recognition as valid is called for by some set of governing rules or moral principles. To have a claim, in turn, is to have a case meriting consideration, that is, to have reasons or grounds that put one in a position to make a claim. Given Feinberg's notion of rights and our current pandemic nightmare situation, what are some important rights that the government and citizens will need to be sure to respect? Many politicians have suggested that in order to stop the spread of the coronavirus, public gatherings should be canceled or prohibited. This suggests that some rights, including the right to freely assemble, are defeasible. In other words, when we consider the reasons for and against recognizing a claim, we may decide that reasons militate against recognizing it. In the case of not allowing people to gather in large groups, the concern is minimizing the public health risk from large gatherings. Another right currently under consideration is universal basic income. Due to the coronavirus, many people are unable to work, and different proposals are now being floated that would automatically provide all Americans with monthly income or one-time payment to help them cover bills while they are unable to work. Consider whether you think people have a right to such assistance, or would you want to say that UBI is merely deserved and not a right? Third, you can consider whether the coronavirus situation shows that people have a right to paid sick leave from work. The federal government currently does not guarantee paid time off for people who get sick. Should it? Finally, the spread of the coronavirus raises the question of whether all people have a right to healthcare. One possible argument for universal healthcare could point to a right to public safety. If people are not guaranteed healthcare, and may be forced to incur massive debt should they go to a doctor, this will create a disincentive to seek out care. This creates conditions where many people with an infectious disease who need treatment will go untreated and will likely spread the disease to others. In order to keep the public safe and prevent the spread of infectious disease, everyone has a right to health care at no cost to the individual. Do you find this argument convincing? One question this argument raises is, how will a universal health care plan be paid for? However, if the costs of such a program would be outweighed by preventing greater costs, that would be one consideration in favor of universal health care. Consider, for instance, the cost of the current coronavirus pandemic.